Hi guys, welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel if you've been subscribed for a while. Good to see you. Today I wanted to talk about yoga props. Over the past couple months I've gotten a lot of new subscribers, and from what I've seen and heard, it looks like a lot of people who are really new to yoga, which welcome, that's awesome. I think it's such an amazing practice, and it's something that is very valuable, especially with everything that's going on right now. I think all of us have been turned upside down by this pandemic, and finding ways to cope and to move and breathe at home while we're still going through all of this, I think is very important and a very good way to keep not only healthy but also just to either heal if you need to find healing and balance during this really chaotic time. I do feel like a lot of people have been drawn to a lot of my yoga videos, which I think is wonderful. I've been loving the feedback that I've been getting. There have been people who've been sharing my videos on Instagram, and really wonderful, and I want to thank you guys for doing that. I plan to continue posting a lot more yoga content over the next couple months, but I myself had come down with COVID, and I've been one of those people who it's taken a really long time to recover. I believe on the tail end of it now. It's been about 3 months, moving into 4 months. I'm just reacquainting myself with movement after being bedridden for quite a long time. And props are so amazing in allowing you to access certain movements, certain positions, postures without compromising your body. There are so many things you can do with all of these props that there's no way I could cover all of it in one sitting. Just giving you examples of things you can do to kind of ignite your curiosity so that you can go out and discover what props can do for you within your own practice. So please forgive me if I don't go into these things super in depth. I'm just kind of giving you a little bit of a taste of what these props are for and how they can help, and then kind of like be like, there, go explore. Yeah. So with that said, let's get to it. So the first prop I want to talk about today are the ones you see pretty much everywhere, the one everyone knows the most about, which are blocks. So what are these for? I could probably talk about the usage of blocks by themselves for a really long time. To simplify the idea of blocks, they are basically to bring the floor up. Whenever you're trying to get into a posture that your body can't quite get to the floor on its own, blocks are there to elevate the floor and bring the floor to you so that you are not forcing your body into a posture that it should not be going into. So I think one of the biggest postures that I think is like a big culprit where people often disregard it and don't want to use it is with half moon pose. A lot of times I'll see people struggling, really fighting to get the hand to the floor and overstretching their hamstring. So the leg that you're standing on, there's oftentimes a lot of tightness there for most people, especially if you're sitting at a desk all day. Most people who sit at a desk all day have really tight hips and really tight hamstrings, which can also cause compression of the lower spine and lower back. You might have low back pain. It takes time to open up the hamstrings, and people should be approaching stretches for them very carefully and very cautiously. In the situation of something like a half moon, you would put the block underneath your hand so that the floor is higher and so that you can be more open in the posture. You can open up the outer hip that's on top and get the stretch of the inner thigh of the leg that's standing, and you can really lengthen in your spine and not just struggle to reach for the floor. Another place where you could use a block to bring the floor up to you is, say you're in pigeon pose and the hip is kind of really high off the ground and there's a lot of tightness there. You would put a block underneath that leg of the hip so that it's supported and so that you're not just hovering in the air and your body isn't struggling when you're in the position. So it should feel very comfortable. So a lot of times using blocks is to make the posture more comfortable, but it's also so that you can actually reach the shape without compromising your body. Another wonderful use of the blocks is to use them to rest on them. I mean, all of these are examples of resting, but say you want to open up the heart, a very classic block usage to open up the heart is fish pose. And this is the first one that I'm suggesting. If you do have 2 blocks, you can actually play with this at home. In order to get into a supported fish pose, you're going to place the block behind your back at the thoracic spine, where a woman's bra line can be found about here. You're going to place the block there. And then the second block is going to go under the head, flat. So right here, if you can see that where my neck is, you're going to lay down on that. This posture is a beautiful heart opener. Just getting into this posture and then taking long, deep breaths here is super relaxing and restorative. One of the things I do want to say is that, you know, when you're taking a class, don't skip the blocks. A lot of times you want to skip it because a lot of times our egos get involved when we're in yoga class, when we're taking yoga in general, and it's going to be a lot easier doing a home practice because you don't have that compulsion as much to push yourself past your threshold. But I see it constantly, I see it all the time. People really ignoring what their body needs, and because they're just paying attention to what's going on in the room and not so much what's going on in their own bodies, and that's how injuries happen. So I really invite you to play with blocks, to like explore them and have fun with them, and maybe don't see them as so much as the enemy, but as something that's here to aid you and guide you. And eventually you won't need them as much. But I've been practicing yoga for about 20 years now, and I still use blocks every single time I practice. There are certain postures that my body just does not want to get into. I've also sustained a number of injuries throughout the years, and there are certain things that I will probably never be able to do, and that's totally fine. Learn about your body, explore your body, and just know that it's okay if there's certain things that you can't get into without some help. These are your friends. Blocks are your friends. Okay, so the next prop is a belt. Basically, all props are used to support you. They're all here to help you get into postures that you may not be able to get into otherwise. It's like the whole point. A lot of times they're great for putting them, strapping them around your feet and using them to get into postures that you might not be able to get into otherwise, and keeping the integrity of the posture. So the next prop I want to talk about is called a zafu. It's basically a meditation cushion. It is what it sounds like, but this is one of the ones that I have. This one is by Chattra. I'm not sponsoring anything today. This is not a sponsored video, so I'm just talking about zafus in general, but in case people are wondering where this is from. Zafus are really great. I use them pretty much in every single practice if I have them available. So at home, I pretty much use them at all times. I'm sitting on one right now while I'm talking to you guys, and that's what my biggest usage for zafus is. If you're sitting in an easy pose and you find that your back starts to hurt quite a lot when you're sitting with your ankles crossed for long periods of time, or if your knees are really high up, like they're really elevated when you're sitting in cross with your ankles crossed, there are 2 things you could do for that. You could put a block under each knee for support, or you could put a meditation cushion down and then sit on it. I sit on the edge of it, and that allows my knees to kind of go downward so that they're not higher than my hip points, and it allows me to just be a lot more comfortable. Sitting down and your hips are so tight that your knees are highly elevated, your back just gets uncomfortable and you're more inclined to slouch. So if you elevate your hips, that's going to allow you to have a little bit more openness, and it just feels a lot more comfortable. If you didn't have a zafu, you could also use blocks for this. I use blocks for this when I don't have them available. You could also use a blanket folded up, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, that's pretty much what I use zafus for. They allow you to sit much more comfortably for longer periods of time and allow your body to stay upright, which enhances your breathing, and it just allows you to have a better practice. So the next prop I'm going to talk about is basically blankets. This is one of my yoga blankets. Honestly, you could use any blanket that has a little bit of density for your practice, but I tend to grab it. I just like yoga blankets that, you know, you can find them pretty much in any yoga site and just look for blankets. What I like yoga blankets for: 1, my knees are hypersensitive, and so a lot of times, and so is my ribs. So a lot of times when we get into postures where we are laying either on our stomachs or we're on our knees, I grab a blanket because I need that support. So blankets are really great to provide extra cushioning. I also like them instead of blocks for when I'm in certain postures that need a little bit more support. So I gave an example of pigeon pose earlier. So I actually prefer to use a blanket, roll it up, and put that under my leg rather than a block. I find it to be a little bit more comfortable. I am all about comfort when I'm in certain positions. Pigeon pose, especially if you're holding it for about 10 breaths, a lot of emotions can come up there and it can be very uncomfortable for a lot of people. So I really like to make sure that certain postures like that, I'm as comfortable as I possibly can be. So I like to use something soft to put under my body for that. You can also use a blanket. If you don't have blocks and you don't have a zafu and you want to elevate your hips off the ground, you can also fold up a blanket and sit on that. That's going to work just as fine as well. The next one I'm going to talk about is a bolster. And bolsters are really, I really love bolsters. They're really fun to like practice with. They're really great for restorative practices and gentle yoga. Bolsters are kind of like big fat pillows that you can lay on, but they do have some density because you want to maintain the integrity of the posture that you're laying in. I find that I often use them when I'm sitting in like child's pose. I need to find a comfortable position because I can't get my head to the floor for whatever reason. So either my ankles are bothering me or my knees are bothering me and I can't get into it really deep. My bolster is very, very thin and they're a bit wider than what I have. I like this one, it serves me, it does what I need it to do. So the last thing I want to talk about is not a prop. It's actually, I mean, I guess you could call it a prop, but it's your yoga mat. I just wanted to talk about the different kinds of mats that are out there because I don't think that there's enough information about that. There are a lot of mats that come in different amounts of thickness. And so there's 3mm, 4mm, 5mm. My mats are pretty much usually 5mm. I really like Manduka mats because they are very clear about the depth of their mats. This is not a sponsored video, they didn't ask me to say this. I also don't like mats that are made out of synthetic materials. If you're breathing deeply and laying and sweating on something, the last thing you want is that it's emitting toxic fumes and chemicals onto your body, into your lungs. So the other thing that I'm really particular about is that most of my mats are rubber. Rubber mats are natural, they degrade, you don't have to worry about them damaging the environment. They're not going to give you toxic fumes. Pretty much another reason why I like Manduka is because I can get mats that I know are going to be safe. The only drawback that I would say is that it's heavy. So it's really important to do your research and find a mat that's right for you. But ideally look for one that's going to be healthy and safe for you to practice on. But there are also mats that are really great for hot yoga. And I have a mat that's kind of on the thinner side, which is problematic for me a lot of times, but it's excellent for hot yoga. Have more tackiness so that you're not sliding as much. I can't think of anything else right now, but if you have a question, you think of anything that I have not covered, please feel free to ask me down below. And there are some videos on the horizon, guys. I'm going to be making some videos soon, specifically yoga, because I miss practicing, I miss my own practice, and I miss sharing them with you guys. So that's pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that some of this information has been helpful. I will see you next time.